In the small town of Pine Creek, some secrets stay buried. Others come knocking at your door. For 20 years, Vivian Mercer has kept her daughter's bedroom exactly as it was on that rainy June day when 8-year-old Lily vanished from their front yard. The police gave up. Her husband moved away. Everyone told her to accept that Lily was gone forever. But Vivian never stopped believing, never stopped looking for her daughter in the face of every young woman she passed on the street. Then, one rainy evening, exactly 20 years after Lily disappeared, a knock comes at Vivian's door. Standing on the porch is a stranger with a hauntingly familiar smile. "Mrs. Mercer?" the young woman asks. "I think I might be your daughter." What happens next will uncover buried truths that will change everything Vivian thought she knew about the day her daughter vanished. Vivian Mercer never forgot the smell of rain on that terrible day in June 1979. It was a clean, fresh scent that should have brought comfort. Instead, it would forever remind her of the worst moment of her life. The morning had started like any other Tuesday. Lily had bounced into the kitchen with her brown curls still tangled from sleep, asking for pancakes with extra syrup. At 8 years old, she was all skinny legs and big dreams, with a gap-toothed smile that could light up the darkest room. "Can I play outside after breakfast, Mom?" Lily asked, maple syrup forming a sticky mustache above her lip. "Only if the rain stops," Vivian answered, wiping her daughter's face with a damp cloth. "And you need to wear your yellow boots. The grass will be wet." By 10 o'clock, the clouds had parted enough to let weak sunlight through. Lily raced to the front yard in her bright yellow rain boots, red ball in hand. Their house was small and blue, set back from the quiet street in Pine Creek, Oregon. Most days, you could count the passing cars on one hand. "Stay where I can see you from the window," Vivian reminded her, watching as Lily began bouncing her ball against the big oak. "Tree! I will!" Lily promised, her voice sing-song and light. The phone rang at 10:23. Vivian remembered checking the clock as she went to answer it. Dale was calling from the hardware store where he worked. "Can you look for my gray toolbox? The one with the red handle?" he asked. "I think it's in the garage. I need it for a job this afternoon." "Hold on," Vivian said. "I'll go check." She glanced out the window first. Lily was still there, trying to do a handstand now, her boots kicked off on the grass. Vivian smiled and headed to the garage. The toolbox wasn't on Dale's workbench. She had to move some boxes to check behind them. It took 5 minutes, maybe 6. When she returned to the phone, Dale was getting impatient. "Found it," she told him. "It was behind those Christmas decorations we still haven't put away properly." "Thanks, Viv. I'll pick it up on my lunch break. Love you." "Love you too." As she hung up, Vivian felt a strange prickle on the back of her neck. She hurried to the front window. The yard was empty. "Lily!" she called, stepping onto the porch. The red ball lay abandoned on the wet grass. Yellow boots stood like small sentinels where Lily had left them. "Lily!" Her voice rose with the first flutter of panic. Vivian ran to the street, looking both ways. Nothing. She checked the backyard, calling her daughter's name. She looked in the garage, the basement, under Lily's bed, all the hiding spots from their games. Nothing. With shaking hands, she dialed Dale, then the police. By afternoon, Pine Creek had transformed. Police cars with flashing lights lined their quiet street. Neighbors formed search parties that combed the nearby woods. Officer Jenkins, a tall man with kind eyes, sat at her kitchen table, asking questions she struggled to answer. "Did you notice any strange cars in the neighborhood lately?" "No." "Has Lily ever wandered off before?" "Never." "Any family troubles that might make her run away?" "She's 8 years old," Vivian whispered. She was happy. The questions felt like accusations, each one a small cut. Why had she left Lily alone? Why hadn't she checked sooner? Why? 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 Dale rushed home, his face white with fear. Together, they walked the streets calling Lily's name until their voices grew hoarse. As darkness fell, neighbors brought flashlights. The search continued into the night. Days stretched into weeks. Lily's face appeared on posters, milk cartons, and the local news. The pretty reporter with perfect hair used words like missing child and possible abduction. Vivian couldn't bear to watch, but she couldn't look away either. Months passed. Searchers stopped coming. The police calls became less frequent. "We're still looking, Mrs. Mercer," they assured her. But she could hear it in their voices. They didn't expect to find Lily anymore. A year later, Dale moved out. He couldn't bear to stay in the house filled with Lily's things, her memory in every room. "I'll call you if there's news," Vivian promised as he loaded his truck. But there never was any news. Vivian kept Lily's room exactly as it was: pink bedspread, stuffed animals arranged on the pillow, favorite books on the shelf. Friends urged her to move on and find closure. But how could she? A mother knows when her child is still out there, and despite what everyone thought, Vivian Mercer knew, deep in her soul, that her daughter was still alive. By 1999, Vivian was 55, years old and living alone. Her hair had turned completely gray, falling in soft waves to her shoulders. The little lines around her eyes had deepened into permanent creases. She still worked at the Pine Creek Library, shelving books and reading stories to children during Saturday morning story time. She still lived in the same blue house, still kept Lily's room ready for her return. She'd learned to live with the hollow feeling in her chest. She'd learned to answer when people asked if she had children with a simple, yes, one daughter. She didn't mention that Lily was missing. It was easier that way. No pitying looks, no awkward silences. But she hadn't learned to stop looking for her daughter in the face of every young woman she passed on the street. Couldn't stop herself from staring a moment too long when she spotted a certain shade of brown hair, a particular way of walking, a familiar laugh. On June 15, 1999, exactly 20 years after Lily disappeared, Vivian sat in her living room with a cup of chamomile tea and a mystery novel. The rain tapped gently against the windows, just as it had on that day. She tried not to think about it, tried not to count the years, the months, the days. But her mind wouldn't listen. She'd be 28 now, Vivian whispered to the empty room. Would she still love pancakes with extra syrup? Would she still sleep with that ratty old teddy bear? The sound of knuckles against wood startled her from these thoughts. She glanced at the clock. 8:17 p.m. No one visited anymore, especially not this late. Vivian set her book down and moved to the door, peering through the peephole. A young woman stood on the porch, shoulders hunched against the rain. Vivian's heart skipped a beat. Then she steadied herself. She'd had these moments before, these flashes of wild hope. They always ended in disappointment. Still, her hands trembled as she opened the door. The woman on the porch was in her late 20s, with long brown hair darkened by rain. She wore a simple green jacket and jeans and clutched a small backpack to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were tentative, watchful. "Mrs. Mercer?" the stranger asked. Her voice was soft, with a slight tremble. "Yes?" Vivian gripped the doorframe for support. 20 years of imagining this moment. And now her legs felt like water, My name is Zoe Wilson. The young woman swallowed hard. I think I might be your daughter. Vivian felt her knees weaken. She'd rehearsed what she would say, what she would do if this moment ever came. But now, faced with this stranger claiming to be her long-lost child, she found herself speechless. It wasn't Lily's face. Not exactly. The cheekbones were higher, the chin more pointed. The eyes were wrong, green instead of blue. But there was something in the way the young woman tilted her head, something in the curve of her smile that made Vivian's heart race. Please, Vivian finally managed, stepping back. Come in out of the rain. The woman, Zoe, hesitated for just a moment before stepping inside. Her eyes darted around the living room, taking in the faded floral couch, the shelves lined with books, the photos on the wall. Her gaze lingered on a framed picture of Lily, gap-toothed and beaming, taken just a month before she vanished. Would you like some tea? Vivian asked, falling back on politeness to mask her tumbling emotions. Yes, please. In the kitchen, Vivian's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the kettle. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. This had happened before. Not exactly like this, but close. 3 years after Lily disappeared, a woman had called claiming her neighbor's child was actually Lily. It had been a cruel mistake. 7 years after, a psychic had led them to an abandoned well. Empty. Hope was dangerous. Hope had nearly broken her before. When she returned with 2 mugs of tea, Zoe was still standing, as if afraid to make herself comfortable. Please, sit, Vivian said, gesturing to the couch. Zoe perched on the edge, hands wrapped tightly around her mug. I don't know where to start. The beginning is usually good, Vivian suggested gently. Zoe nodded, took a deep breath. I was raised by Robert and Martha Wilson in Seattle. They told me I was adopted when I was 10, but never shared many details. I had a good childhood. They were kind people. But I always felt different, out of place. She paused, sipping her tea. 3 months ago, they died in a car accident on Highway 5. I was going through their things, trying to decide what to keep, what to donate. In the attic, I found a box of papers hidden under the floorboards. Adoption. Papers, but strange ones, not official, and newspaper clippings. From her backpack, Zoe pulled out a yellowed newspaper article. Vivian recognized it instantly. The front page of the Pine Creek Gazette, dated June 20th, 1979. Lily's school. Photo was printed beneath the headline, Local Girl Still Missing. There was more, Zoe continued. Letters between my parents, the Wilsons, that suggested I might have been taken, not legally adopted. Vivian's throat tightened. And you think you're Lily? I don't know what I think, Zoe admitted. I don't remember anything from before I was 8. The doctors called it traumatic amnesia when I was younger. The Wilsons said I'd been in an accident before they adopted me. Vivian studied the young woman's face, searching for her daughter. The eye color was wrong. The nose was different. But that smile was so familiar it hurt. Would you be willing to take a DNA test? Vivian asked, her voice trembling. Zoe nodded. That's why I'm here. I need to know the truth. And in that moment, looking at this stranger with the familiar smile, Vivian felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope, blooming in her chest like a flower after a long winter. The DNA test would take 2 weeks. Zoe checked into the Pine Creek Motel, a small place with faded curtains and a flickering vacancy sign. But Vivian couldn't bear the thought of her maybe daughter staying there alone. "Please," she said on the second day. "The guest room is just gathering dust." Zoe hesitated, then agreed. She arrived with a single suitcase and that same small backpack. Her belongings were few: some clothes, a worn paperback novel, a small silver locket. While they waited for the results, Vivian showed Zoe around Pine Creek. The town hadn't changed much in 20 years. The same families owned the same businesses. The same oak trees lined Main Street. "This is the library where I work," Vivian said, pointing to the brick building with green shutters. "And there's Miller's ice cream shop. They make the best chocolate fudge swirl." "Was that Lily's favorite?" Zoe asked quietly. Vivian nodded. She could eat 2 scoops and still beg for more. They walked to the elementary school with its little playground. The swings where Lily used to pump her legs so hard she'd fly almost level with the top bar were still there, though newer now. I went to Westlake Elementary in Seattle," Zoe said. "I was good at math, but terrible at spelling." Vivian smiled. Lily was the opposite. She could spell Mississippi when she was 6, but counting past 20 was a challenge. These small differences should have discouraged Vivian. Yet she found herself looking for signs, for hints of her lost child in this quiet young woman. Zoe seemed genuinely curious about everything. She asked questions about Lily, what she liked to eat, what made her laugh, what scared her. Sometimes, when Vivian told a funny story about something Lily had done, Zoe would laugh in a way that made Vivian's heart stop. It was so much like her daughter's laugh, head tilted back, eyes crinkling at the corners. But there were troubling inconsistencies, too. When Vivian mentioned Lily's butterfly birthmark on her left shoulder, Zoe looked blankly at her. "I don't think I have a birthmark," she said, checking her shoulder. Her skin was smooth, unmarked. Vivian played Lily's favorite songs on the old record player, Disney tunes and children's songs that had once filled the house with Lily's off-key singing. Zoe listened politely, but showed no spark of recognition. And sometimes Vivian caught her making phone calls from her car, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Once, seeing Vivian watching through the window, Zoe quickly hung up, her face flushing. "Just checking on some things back in Seattle," she explained, too casually. Detective Marcus Benson, who had worked Lily's case back in 1979 and was now nearing retirement, came by for coffee. His hair had turned white, and his tall frame stooped slightly. His eyes, though, were as sharp as ever. "I heard about your visitor," he said when Zoe was out. "News travels fast in Pine Creek." "She might be Lily," Vivian said. The words felt strange on her tongue, hopeful and frightening at once. Marcus watched her with kind, worried eyes. "I hope she is, Viv. I really do. But be careful." "What do you mean?" He sighed, set his coffee cup down. "There are people who prey on the grief of others. People looking for money or attention or just a place to belong." "She's not asking for anything," Vivian insisted. "And I know what my daughter looks like." "It's been 20 years, Marcus reminded her gently. "Wait for the DNA test." But Vivian couldn't help it. Each morning, she woke up thinking, "My daughter is sleeping under my roof again." Each night, she paused outside the guest room door, listening to Zoe's soft breathing, imagining. It was Lily. On their 5th day together, Vivian finally showed Zoe Lily's room. It was like stepping into a time capsule. Pink bedspread, stuffed animals, books on the shelf, posters of kittens on the wall. "I've kept it the same," Vivian explained, "just in case." Zoe's eyes filled with tears as she stepped inside. She moved slowly around the room, touching things gently, The small desk where Lily had colored pictures, the bookshelf lined with children's stories. She paused at a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, pulling it from the shelf. "This was my favorite. As a kid," she said softly, running her fingers over the cover. Vivian's breath caught. It had been Lily's favorite too. She'd read it so many times the spine had cracked. "Really?" Vivian whispered. Zoe nodded, opening to the first page. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. She recited the line perfectly, without looking at the words. For one shining moment, Vivian was certain. This was her Lily. She had to be. 4 days later, the DNA results arrived in a plain white envelope. Vivian's hands trembled so badly she couldn't open it. Zoe reached over and gently took it from her. "Together?" she asked. Vivian nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. 20 years of hoping, of praying, of keeping faith when everyone else had given up. All coming down to this single piece of paper. Zoe carefully tore the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. Her eyes scanned the page, her expression unreadable. "I'm not Lily," she whispered. The words hit Vivian like a physical blow. Not a match. The DNA test was negative. Zoe Wilson was not related to her in any way. "I'm so sorry," Zoe said, tears streaming down her face. "I really thought. I hoped." Vivian sat frozen, the world crumbling around her. Hope, that dangerous thing she'd allowed to bloom in her chest, shriveled and died. The next morning, Zoe was gone. She'd left in the night, taking her few belongings. On the guest room pillow was a note with just 2 words. "I'm sorry." Heartbroken again, Vivian fell into a deep depression. Friends checked on her, brought food, urged her to eat. Nancy from the library came daily, sitting quietly beside her. Pastor Jim from the small Methodist church down the street prayed with her, but the pain was too fresh, the hope too recently crushed. It was like losing Lily all over again. A week after Zoe vanished, Detective Benson showed up at Vivian's door with a thick file tucked under his arm. His face was grim. "Can I come in, Viv? There's something you need to see." At the kitchen table, he opened the file and spread out several photographs. They showed Zoe, but with different hair colors, different styles. In one, she looked like a college student with short blonde hair. In another, a businesswoman with sleek black hair pulled into a bun. "Her real name is Zoe Blackwell," Marcus said. "She's a con artist who's done this before, targeting families of missing children." Vivian stared at the photos, feeling sick. She wanted money? Usually, yes. She typically asks for help with medical bills or school loans before the DNA test. Comes back. Then she disappears. "She never asked for money," Vivian said numbly. Marcus looked troubled. "That's what's strange. This time, the pattern is different." He showed Vivian more papers, police reports, prison records. She spent time in prison for fraud in Washington state. Got out 8 months ago. "She knew things about Lily," Vivian whispered. "She liked the same book." Marcus nodded grimly. "She researches her marks thoroughly, learns everything about the missing child, then presents herself as a plausible adult version." But something didn't add up. Why had Zoe left without taking anything? Why change her usual pattern? Maybe she really thought she might be Lily, Vivian suggested. "Those papers she mentioned were probably fakes," Marcus finished. "Part of her con." As Vivian flipped through the file, a small photo fell out. A prison visitor log with a familiar face. Her heart stopped. "That's Dale," she gasped. My ex-husband! Marcus picked up the photo, squinting at it. Are you sure? Positive. Vivian felt suddenly cold. That's Dale visiting Zoe in prison. But why? Why would he? Marcus's face turned grim. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He made some calls. Dale, they discovered, was living in a nursing home in Portland. Early onset Alzheimer's had taken most of his memories. Some days he didn't know his own name. But the staff said he sometimes had periods of clarity. I need to see him, Vivian said. We'll go tomorrow, Marcus promised. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. She paced the house, looking at old photos of Dale with Lily, his smile in those pictures, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, the slight tilt of his head, just like Zoe's smile, just like the smile she'd thought was so familiar. The realization hit her like a wave, sending her to her knees in the middle of the living room. It wasn't Lily's smile she'd recognized on Zoe's face. It was Dale's. But why? Why would Dale visit a con artist in prison? Why would this woman who looked so much like him target Vivian specifically? The questions swirled in her mind like storm clouds, dark and threatening. For the first time in 20 years, Vivian was afraid of what the truth might be. The Golden Pines nursing home sat surrounded by tall trees just outside Portland. It was a nice place, clean, with cheerful murals on the walls, and staff who smiled warmly as Vivian and Marcus signed in at the front desk. Mr. Mercer is having a good day, the nurse told them. He's in the garden. They found Dale sitting in a wheelchair beside a small pond. At 62, he looked 20 years older. His once strong frame had shrunk, his hands trembled slightly, and his gaze seemed distant. The man who had built bookshelves and fixed leaky pipes now looked like he might blow away in a strong wind. At first, he didn't recognize Vivian. He smiled, politely, and asked if she was a new nurse. It's me, Dale. It's Vivian, she said, kneeling before him. Dale's eyes remained blank for a long moment. Then suddenly, they cleared. His face transformed, recognition flooding in. Viv? He whispered. Is it really you? Yes, Dale. It's me. Tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Viv. For what, Dale? Vivian asked, her heart pounding. Marcus stood quietly behind her, watching. For Lily. It was an accident. The world seemed to stop. Vivian couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could do was stare at Dale's face as the truth spilled out in broken pieces. On that rainy day in 1979, Dale had been drinking. Not enough to be drunk, but enough. He'd come home early from work, seen Lily playing in the yard. Vivian had been inside. On impulse, he'd picked Lily up, told her they were going for ice cream. Their little secret. She was so happy, Dale said, his voice cracking, bouncing in the seat, talking about getting rainbow sprinkles. But on the drive, he'd told her not to tell Vivian about their trip. Lily had gotten upset. She said lying was bad, that you'd be worried. Dale's eyes filled with tears. She tried to open the car door at a stoplight, said she wanted to go home. The door had opened. Lily had fallen. Her head had hit the curb. There was so much blood, Dale whispered. I tried to help. Her, Viv. I tried. Vivian listened in horror as her ex-husband destroyed the foundation of her life. All these years, while she'd been searching, hoping, praying, he'd known. He'd known what happened to their daughter. What did you do? Marcus asked, his voice hard. Dale looked confused for a moment. Then his eyes cleared again. I panicked. I was scared. There was a spot in the woods where we used to picnic. I took her there. I buried her there. I was going to tell Vivian, but then the police came, and everyone was searching, and I couldn't. His words dissolved into sobs. Vivian felt nothing. No anger, no grief, just a terrible emptiness. Why did you visit Zoe Blackwell? In prison? Marcus demanded. Dale looked confused again. Then a spark of recognition flickered. My daughter, he mumbled. My other daughter. What? Vivian whispered. Dale's gaze became clearer. Before you, Viv, there was a woman named Sarah, in Seattle. She got pregnant. I wasn't ready to be a father. I left. The final piece fell into place. Before marrying Vivian, Dale had had another child, a daughter he'd abandoned before she was even born. That child was Zoe. She found me, Dale continued, 5 years ago. Tracked me down. So angry. She had every right to be. Zoe had discovered her birth father's identity. Then, through him, she'd learned about her half-sister Lily and the mystery of her disappearance. She hadn't come to con Vivian. She'd come to find answers about her own family, to understand the father who'd abandoned her, and perhaps, in some twisted way, to give Vivian what she'd always wanted, for Lily to come home. As Vivian left the nursing home, her world forever changed. She found Zoe waiting in the parking lot, leaning against a blue car. I'm sorry, Zoe said, tears in her eyes. I just wanted to know where I came from. Then I met you, and you were so kind, so full of love for a daughter who was gone. I thought maybe... Vivian looked at her, this woman who was not Lily, but who carried the same blood, the woman with the smile that had seemed so familiar. Now she understood why. It wasn't Lily's smile she'd recognized, it was Dale's. Two women stood facing each other, both betrayed, both broken by the same man's actions, both searching for something they'd never had. Would you like to come home? Vivian asked softly. For tea? Zoe nodded, tears streaming down her face. They couldn't replace what each had lost, but perhaps, in finding each other, they could begin to heal. As they walked to Vivian's car, Detective Benson opened the nursing home door behind them. His face was grim. Vivian, he called, there's something else. Dale said he buried Lily near Pine Creek Falls, but... He hesitated. He says when he went back the next day to make sure the grave was hidden, the body was gone. That was the end of this story. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from today. Whether you're curled up at home or listening during your commute, hearing from my audience always brightens my day. If you enjoyed this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me create more intriguing stories like this one. Also, if this story touched your heart, please consider sharing it with friends and family. Every share spreads a little more kindness and awareness in the world. And that's something we could all use more of. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.